I supported my girlfriend's photography dreams for years, but she never took a single photo. When I suggested she get a job, she revealed a dark truth that changed everything. I, William, 28M, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend Chloe, 26F, for the past 3 years. We met during a mutual friend's birthday party at a local brewery. I remember that night vividly. I was running late because of a work emergency and almost didn't go. When I finally arrived, the party was in full swing. I spotted Chloe across the room, laughing with a group of people I didn't know. She had this infectious smile that immediately caught my attention. Our mutual friend, Jake, introduced us. Chloe and I hit it off right away, bonding over our shared love of indie music and cult classic movies. We ended up talking for hours that night, long after most of the other partygoers had left. I learned that Chloe was working as a part-time barista at a hip coffee shop downtown while pursuing her dream of becoming a professional photographer. For the first year of our relationship, everything was great. We went on adventures together, trying new restaurants and exploring hidden gems in our city. We even took a spontaneous road trip down the coast, sleeping in my beat-up old car and waking up to watch the sunrise over the ocean. Those early days were filled with laughter, passion, and endless possibilities. Chloe was always coming up with creative date ideas. One time, she surprised me with a picnic in the park, complete with a gourmet cheese plate she'd put together from samples at her work. Another time, she organized a scavenger hunt across the city, leaving clues at all the places that were significant to our relationship. Her enthusiasm and zest for life were infectious, and I found myself falling deeper in love with her every day. However, as time went on, I started noticing some concerning patterns in Chloe's behavior. About 6 months into our relationship, she quit her job at the coffee shop. She said the early mornings were interfering with her photography, and she wanted to focus on building her portfolio. I supported her decision, thinking it was a brave move to pursue her passion. But months passed, and Chloe didn't seem to be making any progress with her photography. She talked about grand plans, setting up a home studio, starting a website, reaching out to local galleries, but none of these ideas ever materialized. Instead, she spent most of her days at home, scrolling through social media and binge-watching TV shows. At first, I tried to be understanding. I knew how hard it could be to break into a creative field. I encouraged her to take small steps, like practicing her skills or researching photography contests she could enter. But whenever I brought up these suggestions, Chloe would get defensive. She'd say I was pressuring her or that I didn't understand her creative process. As our second anniversary approached, I realized Chloe hadn't worked or earned any income in over a year. She was living with her parents, who covered all her expenses. They seemed content to support her indefinitely, never pushing her to find a job or contribute to the household. I, on the other hand, had been working hard at my job in marketing. I'd recently been promoted to team lead, which meant longer hours and more responsibilities. I was trying to save up for our future together, dreaming of the day we could get our own place. The disparity in our situation started to create tension. When we went out, I always paid for everything because Chloe never had any money of her own. She'd often ask me to buy her things or take her places, and I felt guilty saying no. But at the same time, I was becoming resentful. Why was I working so hard while Chloe seemed content to do nothing? I tried to encourage Chloe to look for jobs, even if they weren't related to photography. I suggested she might take some online courses to improve her skills or expand her options. But she always had excuses. The job market was tough. She wasn't feeling well. She was waiting for the right opportunity to come along. Things came to a head last month when I suggested we move in together. I thought it might motivate Chloe to start contributing financially. To my surprise, she was excited about the idea but assumed I'd be covering all the expenses. When I explained that we'd need to split the rent and bills, she got upset and accused me of not supporting her dreams. That argument led to a bigger discussion about our future. I opened up about my concerns, explaining that I wanted a partner who was ambitious and self-sufficient, someone who could contribute to building a life together. Chloe accused me of being materialistic and said that if I really loved her, I would support her unconditionally. The thing is, I do love Chloe. When things are good between us, they're really good. We still have those moments of connection that remind me why I fell for her in the first place. Last week, we spent an afternoon at the beach, and for a few hours, it felt like old times. We laughed, we talked about our dreams, and I could see glimpses of the vibrant, creative woman I fell in love with. But those moments are becoming rarer, overshadowed by the growing resentment and frustration I feel. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being taken advantage of. I want to build a future with Chloe, but I'm not sure if that's possible if she's not willing to put in the effort. I've tried talking to her about my concerns multiple times, but the conversations always end the same way. Chloe either gets defensive or makes vague promises to change that never materialize. Her parents don't seem to see a problem with the situation and continue to enable her behavior. I'm torn because I care deeply for Chloe, and I remember how things used to be between us. I keep hoping that she'll snap out of this phase and become the motivated, ambitious person I know she can be. But with each passing day, that hope fades a little more. I'm not sure what to do. Part of me thinks I should give Chloe an ultimatum, either she starts taking steps to become financially independent, or we need to reevaluate our relationship. But another part of me worries that this would be unfair or controlling. I don't want to force Chloe into a life she doesn't want, but I also can't continue in a relationship where I feel like I'm the only one invested in our future. Am I being unreasonable in my expectations? How can I address this issue without coming across as unsupportive or materialistic? Is there a way to motivate Chloe without pressuring her? I want to build a future with her, but I'm starting to wonder if our visions for that future are compatible. Any advice would be appreciated. I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and I'm not sure which path to take. Update 1. It's been about a month since my original post, and I wanted to provide an update on the situation with Chloe. After reading the comments on my original post, I realized I needed to have a serious conversation with Chloe about our future. I spent several days thinking about how to approach the topic without causing another argument. Finally, I invited her over to my place for dinner, hoping that a relaxed setting might make the conversation easier. I cooked Chloe's favorite meal, homemade lasagna with garlic bread. As we ate, we chatted about casual things, recalling about some of our favorite memories together. After dinner, I suggested we take a walk in the nearby park. It was a beautiful evening, and I thought the neutral territory might help keep things calm. As we walked, I gently brought up my concerns. I started by telling Chloe how much I loved her and how I valued our relationship. Then, as calmly as I could, I explained that I was worried about the direction our relationship was taking. I told her that I wanted a partner who could contribute equally to our life together, both emotionally and financially. Chloe's initial reaction was defensive, just as I'd feared. She accused me of not understanding her creative process and said that I was trying to force her into a conventional lifestyle. But as we continued talking, walking slowly around the park, her tone began to change. To my surprise, she admitted that she had been feeling lost and unsure about her future for a while. Chloe opened up about how seeing her friends progress in their careers while she remained stagnant had been affecting her self-esteem. She confessed that her lack of direction had been causing her anxiety, which in turn made it harder for her to take action. It was a cycle she felt trapped in. As we sat on a park bench, watching the sun set, I suggested that we come up with a plan together. We spent the next few hours brainstorming ideas for how Chloe could start moving towards financial independence while still pursuing her passion for photography. We agreed that she would start by looking for part-time work to bring in some income while still having time for her art. She also decided to reach out to a local community center that offered affordable art classes to see if she could teach a beginner's photography course. It would be a way to share her skills and potentially network with other artists. For the next couple of weeks, things seemed to be improving. Chloe applied for a few jobs and even had an interview at a local bookstore. She also started posting more regularly on her photography Instagram account, engaging with other photographers and building her online presence. She attended a local art fair where she spoke with some gallery owners about potentially displaying her work. Although nothing concrete came from these conversations, Chloe seemed energized by the experience. She started talking about organizing her own exhibition, something she hadn't mentioned in months. However, as the third week rolled around, I noticed Chloe's enthusiasm waning. She started making excuses for why she couldn't go to job interviews. She'd say she wasn't feeling well or that something had come up with her family. When I asked about her photography, she'd change the subject or say she was waiting for inspiration to strike. Things came to a head last weekend. We had plans to go hiking, something we both usually enjoy. I was excited because I thought it would be a good opportunity for Chloe to practice her nature photography. But when I went to pick her up, she was still in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. She said she didn't feel like going out and suggested we just watch movies at her place instead. I felt a surge of frustration. This was the same behavior that had been bothering me for months. I told Chloe that I was disappointed and that I felt like she wasn't taking our agreement seriously. She got upset and accused me of being controlling and unsupportive. We had a heated argument. Chloe said I was pressuring her and that I didn't understand how hard things were for her. She brought up how her parents never pushed her this way, implying that my expectations were unreasonable. I countered that I had been patient and supportive for years, but that I needed to see some effort from her side. The argument ended with Chloe asking me to leave. She said she needed some space to think things over. I left feeling angry and hurt, but also somewhat relieved that everything was out in the open. It's been 3 days since then, and Chloe hasn't reached out. I've been replaying our argument in my head, wondering if I was too harsh or if I should have approached things differently. Part of me wants to call her and apologize, to try and smooth things over. But another part of me feels like this might be the wake-up call Chloe needs. I'm torn between giving her the space she asked for and feeling like I need to push for a resolution. I care about Chloe, and I can see that she's struggling. But I'm also starting to wonder if we're truly compatible in the long term. Can I build a future with someone who seems unable or unwilling to take responsibility for their own life? I'm not sure what the next step should be. Part of me thinks I should wait for Chloe to contact me, to see if she's willing to make changes. Another part of me feels like I need to be proactive and maybe even consider ending the relationship if things don't improve. Any advice on how to proceed would be appreciated. I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and I'm not sure which path to take. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and a lot has happened. I wanted to share the latest developments in my situation with Chloe. After our argument, Chloe and I didn't speak for almost a week. It was a difficult and anxious time for me. I found myself constantly checking my phone, hoping for a message from her. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office to avoid going home to an empty apartment. My colleagues noticed something was off, but I didn't feel ready to talk about it. Finally, after 6 days of silence, Chloe reached out. She sent a text asking if we could meet at the local park where we had our first kiss. I agreed, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. When I arrived at the park, I found Chloe sitting on our usual bench, feeding the ducks. She looked tired and subdued, a far cry from the vibrant woman I fell in love with. As I sat down next to her, I noticed she was wearing the necklace I gave her for our first anniversary, a small silver camera pendant. It gave me a glimmer of hope. Chloe started by apologizing for her reaction during our last conversation. She admitted that she had been avoiding dealing with her issues and that my concerns had forced her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself. Then, she revealed something that took me completely by surprise. Chloe told me that she had been struggling with depression for the past year but had been hiding it from everyone, including me. She said she was embarrassed about her lack of progress in life and that it had created a cycle of avoidance and self-doubt. Some days, she could barely get out of bed, let alone work on her photography or look for a job. I was shocked that I hadn't realized the extent of her struggles. Looking back, I could see the signs: her lack of energy, her avoidance of social situations, her decreased interest in things she used to love. I felt guilty for not seeing it earlier, but I also felt frustrated that Chloe hadn't confided in me sooner. We talked for hours, going over our relationship and our individual goals. Chloe said she wanted to make changes but wasn't sure where to start. She felt overwhelmed by the idea of job hunting or building her photography career while also dealing with her depression. I suggested that she might benefit from talking to a professional who could help her work through her depression and develop strategies for moving forward. To my surprise, Chloe agreed. She said she had been considering it for a while but had been too afraid to take that step. We looked up some local counselors on my phone right there in the park, and Chloe made an appointment for the following week. We also discussed our relationship. I explained that while I cared deeply for her, I needed to see concrete changes if we were going to have a future together. Chloe understood and asked if I would be willing to support her through this process of getting help and finding direction. I agreed, but with some conditions. I told Chloe that I needed to see consistent effort from her side. We came up with a plan. Chloe would attend counseling regularly, start volunteering at a local community center to gain some work experience, and set aside time each week to work on her photography portfolio. In return, I promised to be patient and supportive, but I also made it clear that I wouldn't continue the relationship indefinitely if I didn't see progress. We agreed to check in every couple of weeks to discuss how things were going and adjust our plan if needed. It's been a week since the conversation, and so far, Chloe seems to be sticking to our agreement. She went to her first counseling session and said it was helpful, if uncomfortable. She's also reached out to the community center about volunteer opportunities and has started organizing her old photography equipment. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I also know we have a long road ahead of us. Chloe's issues won't be solved overnight, and I'm trying to manage my expectations. I care about her and want to support her, but I'm also aware that I need to look out for my own well-being and future. I'm still not sure if Chloe and I will make it in the long term, but I feel like we're at least moving in a positive direction now. I'm hoping that with professional help and a clear plan, Chloe will be able to work through her depression and find her path. I'll continue to update as things progress. Thank you to everyone who's offered advice and support through this challenging time. Update 3. It's been about a month since my last update, and I wanted to share the latest developments in my situation with Chloe. Initially, things seemed to be improving. Chloe was attending her counseling sessions regularly and had started volunteering at the local community center twice a week. She even began working on her photography portfolio again, setting up a small home studio in her parents' garage. I was cautiously optimistic about these changes. Chloe seemed more energetic and engaged, and we were having meaningful conversations about our future together. We even started planning a small weekend trip to a nearby town known for its picturesque landscapes, perfect for Chloe to practice her photography. However, as the weeks went by, I started noticing some concerning patterns re-emerging. It started small at first. Chloe would oversleep and miss her morning volunteering shift. She'd promised to make it up later in the week, but often didn't follow through. When I gently asked about it, she'd get defensive and say she was still adjusting to the new routine. Then, Chloe began making excuses to skip her counseling sessions. She'd say she wasn't feeling well or that something had come up with her family. When I reminded her of the importance of consistency in therapy, she accused me of pressuring her and not understanding how difficult it was. Her enthusiasm for photography also seemed to be waning. The home studio she had set up was gathering dust. When I suggested we go on photo walks together, she'd say she wasn't feeling inspired or that the lighting wasn't right. The weekend trip we had planned kept getting postponed for various reasons. I found myself becoming increasingly frustrated. It felt like we were slipping back into old patterns, despite our previous conversations and agreements. I tried to be patient and supportive, remembering that change takes time, But I couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe wasn't fully committed to making real progress. Things came to a head last week when I brought up the idea of her looking for paid work, even if it was part-time or in a field unrelated to photography. Chloe became upset, saying that I was trying to force her into a conventional lifestyle and that I didn't understand her creative process. She accused me of not being supportive of her dreams and said that if I truly loved her, I would accept her as she is. This argument made me realize something important. While I do love Chloe, I'm not sure I can build a future with someone who isn't willing to put in the effort to grow and contribute to our shared life. I've spent the past 3 years hoping that things would change, but I'm starting to accept that maybe they won't. After a lot of soul-searching and a long talk with my best friend, I made the difficult decision to end our relationship. I met with Chloe yesterday at a quiet cafe we used to frequent. I wanted to have this conversation in person, in a place that held good memories for us. I explained my feelings as gently as I could. I told her that I care about her deeply, but that I don't think we're compatible in terms of our life goals and work ethic. I explained that I need a partner who is willing to put in consistent effort towards building a life together, and that I don't think she's in a place to do that right now. Chloe was understandably upset. She cried and pleaded with me to give her another chance, promising that things would be different this time. She brought up all the good times we'd had together and said that she couldn't imagine her life without me. For a moment, I wavered, remembering all the reasons I fell in love with her. But then I reminded myself of the past few months and how nothing had really changed despite multiple chances. I stood firm in my decision, though it broke my heart to see her so distraught. I suggested that we both take some time apart to work on ourselves. I encouraged Chloe to continue with her therapy and to focus on finding what truly makes her happy. As we said our goodbyes, Chloe asked if we could stay friends. I told her that while I care about her, I think we both need some space to heal and move forward. Maybe in the future, we could consider a friendship, but for now, it's best if we go our separate ways. Walking away from that cafe was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Despite the problems in our relationship, Chloe has been a huge part of my life for the past 3 years. I know there will be moments in the coming days and weeks when I'll second-guess my decision, when I'll be tempted to call her and try to work things out. But deep down, I know this is the right choice for both of us. I need to focus on my own growth and find a partner whose goals and values align with mine. And Chloe needs the space to figure out what she really wants from life, without the pressure of my expectations. I'm now focusing on healing and moving forward. I've signed up for a photography class myself, something I'd always been interested in but never pursued because I didn't want to encroach on Chloe's passion. I'm also planning a solo trip for next month, something I've always wanted to do but never found the time for. I've learned a lot from this relationship about what I need in a partner and the importance of addressing issues early on rather than hoping they'll resolve themselves. While it hurts now, I believe this experience will help me build healthier relationships in the future. Thank you to everyone who's followed this journey and offered advice along the way. Your support has been invaluable in helping me navigate this challenging situation. Here's to new beginnings and personal growth. My eco-friendly wife's secret dating app life revealed. She was cheating our entire relationship and now claims she's pregnant to stop the divorce. I never thought I'd be writing a post like this. My wife Deborah, 26F, and I have been married for 3 years, but our story goes back much further. We first met at a local animal shelter where we both volunteered. I had been going there for about a year, finding it a great way to de-stress after long days at my graphic design job. Deborah started volunteering a few months after I did, and from the moment I saw her, I was intrigued. She had this vibrant energy about her, always chatting with the other volunteers and cooing at the animals. Her long brown hair was usually tied back in a messy bun, and she wore these thick framed glasses that somehow made her blue eyes stand out even more. I remember thinking she looked like she'd stepped out of a quirky indie movie. Our first real conversation happened over a litter of kittens. I was cleaning their cage, and Deborah came over to help. We got to talking about our favorite animals, and before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. She told me she worked as a social media manager for a small eco-friendly company, and her eyes lit up when she talked about their mission to reduce plastic waste in oceans. I was impressed by her passion and knowledge about environmental issues. Growing up, my family had always been pretty environmentally conscious. We recycled, used reusable bags, that sort of thing. But Deborah took it to another level. She told me about how she'd organized beach cleanups in college and even helped start a community garden in her hometown. Over the next few weeks, we started timing our volunteer shifts so we'd be there at the same time. We'd walk dogs together, swap stories about the cats, and gradually, our conversations started to extend beyond the shelter. Deborah told me about her dreams of someday starting her own eco-friendly marketing agency. I shared my hopes of one day opening my own design studio. About a month after we met, I finally worked up the courage to ask her out. We went to a vegan cafe she recommended. I wasn't vegan, but I was willing to try it for her. The date was perfect. We talked for hours about everything from our favorite books to our childhood pets. Deborah told me about growing up in a small town and how she'd always dreamed of moving to the city. I shared stories about my large, noisy family and how I was the first one to move away for college. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Within 6 months, we were talking about moving in together. My lease was up, and Deborah suggested we look for a place together. I was hesitant at first, it seemed fast, but everything with Deborah felt right, so I agreed. We found a cozy apartment with a small balcony where Deborah immediately started a herb garden. Living together was an adjustment, but a good one. I loved waking up to the smell of the fair trade coffee Deborah always bought, and coming home to find her curled up on our second-hand couch, working on her laptop with one of her favorite documentaries playing in the background. A year into our relationship, I proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture. Deborah had always said she preferred simple and meaningful over flashy. I took her back to the animal shelter where we met, and as we were playing with a litter of puppies, I pulled out the ring. It was a simple band made from recycled gold with a small, ethically sourced diamond. Deborah's eyes welled up with tears as she said yes. Our wedding was small and intimate, just close friends and family. We held it in a local park and asked guests to donate to the animal shelter instead of giving gifts. My parents adored Deborah from the start. My mom especially loved how Deborah would always help in the kitchen during family dinners, swapping recipes and chatting about the latest eco-friendly products she discovered. Deborah's parents seemed to like me too, although they were a bit more reserved. They had divorced when Deborah was in high school, and I got the sense that it had been messy. Deborah didn't talk about it much, just saying that it had been a difficult time but that she was closer to both of them now because of it. Throughout our relationship, Deborah always emphasized the importance of honesty and open communication. She often talked about how her ex-boyfriend had cheated on her during college, and how that experience made her value trust above all else. I respected that and made sure to always be upfront with her about everything. From small things like if I accidentally shrunk one of her sweaters in the wash to bigger things like when I was considering changing jobs. Last year, we decided to start trying for a baby. Deborah was over the moon about the idea of becoming a mother. We even started a YouTube channel documenting our journey to parenthood. Deborah came up with the idea, saying it would be a great way to connect with other couples going through the same thing. We shared tips on fertility, healthy living, and our experiences as a couple preparing for this new chapter in our lives. I was a bit camera shy at first, but Deborah was a natural. She'd plan out our videos, research topics to discuss, and edit everything herself. The channel gained a decent following, and we enjoyed interacting with our viewers. Deborah would spend hours responding to comments and messages, offering support and advice to other couples struggling with fertility. Everything seemed perfect until about 2 months ago. I was working late one night, trying to finish a project for a big client. It was a rebranding job for a local business that was expanding nationally, and landing this client could mean big things for my career. Around midnight, I realized I had left some important files on my home computer. I called Deborah to ask if she could send them to me, but she didn't pick up. I figured she was probably asleep, so I decided to head home quickly to grab the files myself. When I got home, I noticed Deborah's car wasn't in the driveway. It was strange because she usually goes to bed early, especially since we'd been trying for a baby. She was always talking about how important sleep was for fertility. I entered the house, and it was dark and quiet. I went to our home office to get the files I needed, and that's when I noticed Deborah's laptop was open on the desk. I'm not proud of what I did next, but something felt off, and my curiosity got the better of me. I looked at her screen and saw she was logged into a dating app. My heart sank. I clicked through her profile and messages, each revelation more painful than the last. Not only was Deborah actively using this app, but her profile contained information that contradicted everything I knew about her. She claimed to be single, childless, and working as a marketing executive for a large corporation. Her bio mentioned loving to travel and party, things Deborah had always said she wasn't interested in because of the environmental impact and her desire to live a more settled life. I scrolled through her messages, feeling sick to my stomach. She had been talking to multiple guys, arranging meetups, and even sexting with some of them. The oldest messages dated back to before we were even married. There were countless conversations, each one feeling like a fresh betrayal. One conversation stood out. It was with a guy named Alex. They seemed to know each other well, discussing inside jokes and making plans for the weekend. Deborah had told him she was looking forward to their usual Saturday night fun. The last message was from earlier that evening, confirming plans to meet at a bar downtown. I was in shock. I couldn't reconcile this version of Deborah with the woman I thought I knew and loved. The Deborah I knew spent her Saturday nights cuddled up on the couch with me, watching nature documentaries or planning our next beach cleanup volunteer day. She wasn't the type to go bar hopping or meet strange men from the internet. With shaking hands, I copied some of the evidence to my phone, not sure what I was going to do with it yet. Then I heard the front door open. I quickly closed her laptop and pretended to be focused on my own computer. Deborah walked in, dressed up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. She was wearing a tight black dress and heels, her hair and makeup done perfectly. When she saw me, her face went pale. She started stammering, trying to come up with an explanation, but I just held up my hand and showed her what I had found on her laptop. The next few hours were a blur of tears, shouting, and accusations. Deborah admitted that she had been living a double life our entire relationship. She confessed that she had never worked for an eco-friendly company, that was just a cover for her real job at a large marketing firm, which she thought wouldn't impress me. The cheating ex-boyfriend story was made up to make herself seem more relatable and trustworthy. She begged me to forgive her, saying she loved me and that all the guys from the app meant nothing. She claimed she just craved the excitement and attention, but that I was the one she wanted to be with. I was too hurt and angry to process any of it. I packed a bag and left to stay with my brother. It's been 2 weeks now, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. Our friends and family are shocked, and our YouTube followers are wondering why we've suddenly stopped posting. I haven't decided what to do yet, but I know I can't just forgive and forget. The level of deception is too deep, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust Deborah again. I guess I'm writing this post because I need advice. How do I even begin to deal with this situation? Has anyone else experienced something similar? I feel like my whole life for the past 4 years has been a lie, and I don't know where to go from here. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me gain some perspective on the situation. After spending a week at my brother's place, I decided I needed to confront Deborah and get the full truth. I moved back into our house, but I slept in the guest room. Deborah seemed relieved that I was back, but I made it clear that this wasn't a reconciliation, I just wanted answers. Over the next few days, we had long, painful conversations where Deborah revealed the extent of her deceptions. It turns out, almost everything about her was a lie. She didn't volunteer at the animal shelter, she was there as part of a court-mandated community service for a DUI she got 2 years before we met. Her passion for animal rights and environmental issues? All fabricated to impress me. The job at the eco-friendly company was entirely made up. In reality, she worked as a junior account manager at a large marketing firm. She said she lied about her job because she thought I wouldn't be interested in someone who worked for a soulless corporation. When I asked her about all the details she'd shared about her supposed eco-friendly work, she admitted she'd researched it all online, memorizing facts and figures to make her lies more convincing. But the lies went even deeper. Deborah confessed that she had been married before, for a brief 6 months when she was 22. She had hidden this from me because she was ashamed of how quickly the marriage had fallen apart. Her ex-husband, Tom, 30M, had caught her cheating, which led to their divorce. As Deborah told me about her previous marriage, more lies unraveled. The small town she claimed to be from? She'd never lived there. She'd grown up in the city, in a wealthy suburb. Her parents hadn't divorced messily when she was in high school, they were still happily married. The whole backstory she'd created was designed to make her seem more relatable and down to earth. I asked about the vegan lifestyle she'd introduced me to, the documentaries she was always watching, the beach cleanups she claimed to have organized. Deborah broke down, admitting that it was all part of the persona she'd created. She'd never been vegan before meeting me, had never organized any environmental events. She said she'd chosen that personality because she thought it would appeal to me. As for the dating app and her double life, Deborah claimed it started as a way to network for her job. She said she created a profile that she thought would appeal to potential clients in the corporate world. But over time, she got addicted to the attention and the thrill of leading a secret life. I asked her about our plans for a baby, and if that had all been a lie too. Deborah broke down at this point, admitting that she had been taking birth control pills in secret the entire time we were trying to conceive. She said she wasn't ready for a baby but didn't know how to tell me. The fertility tips she shared on our YouTube channel? All researched online, never actually put into practice. The YouTube channel, which had been a source of joy for me, turned out to be just another part of her deception. Deborah confessed that she saw it as a way to boost her personal brand for her marketing career. She never really wanted to share our life, it was all about gaining followers and potentially lucrative sponsorships. I asked about Alex, the guy she had been messaging the night I discovered everything. Deborah hesitated before admitting that Alex wasn't just some random guy from the app. He was a coworker, someone she'd been having an on and off affair with for years, even before we met. The usual Saturday night fun wasn't just a casual meet-up, it was a long-standing arrangement. Throughout these conversations, Deborah kept apologizing and begging for another chance. She promised to change, to be honest from now on, and to be the person she had pretended to be. But with each new revelation, I felt more and more distant from her. The woman I loved had never really existed. I've decided to file for divorce. The trust between us is completely shattered, and I don't see how we can rebuild it. I've contacted a lawyer and started the process. Deborah didn't take the news well. She alternates between begging me to reconsider and lashing out in anger, accusing me of giving up too easily. I've also decided to come clean to our YouTube followers. I posted a final video explaining the situation in broad strokes, apologizing for the deception, and announcing the end of the channel. The response has been overwhelming, with many followers sharing their own stories of deception and offering support. My family and true friends have been incredibly supportive. My brother, in particular, has been a rock through all of this. He's helping me look for a new apartment so I can move out of the house I shared with Deborah. It's painful to think about leaving the home we built together, but I know it's necessary for my healing process. It's been a tough month, but I'm starting to see a way forward. I know the divorce process won't be easy, especially given Deborah's unpredictable behavior, but I'm committed to moving on and rebuilding my life on a foundation of truth. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and the situation has taken some unexpected turns. The divorce proceedings are underway, but they've been complicated by Deborah's erratic behavior and some surprising revelations. First, about a month ago, Deborah's ex-husband Tom, 30M, reached out to me. He had seen our final YouTube video and recognized Deborah. Tom shared his own experience with Deborah's deceptions, which eerily mirrored my own. He told me about how Deborah had created a completely false persona when they met, claiming to be a struggling artist when she was actually from a wealthy family and working in marketing. Tom warned me that Deborah might try to manipulate the divorce proceedings and advised me to be cautious. Tom's warning proved prescient. Deborah initially agreed to an amicable split, but she quickly changed tactics. She hired an aggressive lawyer and is now contesting the divorce, claiming that I was emotionally abusive and that she only created the dating profile because she felt neglected in our marriage. It's frustrating to see her spinning new lies, but I'm trying to stay calm and let my lawyer handle it. To complicate matters further, Deborah announced on social media that she's pregnant. She claims the baby is mine, conceived during our last month together. Given her history of lies, I'm skeptical, but I've told my lawyer that I want a paternity test as soon as it's safely possible. The timing of this announcement feels suspiciously convenient, especially considering she had been secretly taking birth control throughout our marriage. The pregnancy announcement has divided our friend group and extended family. Some believe Deborah and think I'm abandoning her in her time of need. Others, who know the full story, are supporting me and questioning the convenient timing of this pregnancy. It's been hard to see people I thought were my friends turn against me, but it's also shown me who my true supporters are. On the work front, I've thrown myself into my graphic design projects. The client I was working on when I discovered Deborah's deception was impressed with my work despite the personal turmoil, and they've since referred me to other big clients. It's been a welcome distraction and a source of stability in this chaos. I'm grateful that at least one aspect of my life is going well. I've also started individual counseling to help process everything that's happened. It's been helpful in dealing with the anger and betrayal I feel, and in rebuilding my self-esteem. The therapist has been particularly useful in helping me recognize and avoid Deborah's manipulation tactics. One positive development is that I've reconnected with an old friend from college, Emily, 27F. She reached out after hearing about my situation from a mutual friend. We've been talking regularly, and her support has been invaluable. She's reminded me of who I was before I met Deborah and has been encouraging me to rediscover my old hobbies and interests. As for the house, Deborah refused to move out, so I found a small apartment. Moving out was hard, it felt like admitting defeat in a way, but it's also been freeing. I'm slowly making the new place feel like home, and it's nice to have a space that isn't tainted by lies and betrayal. The legal battle ahead looks like it's going to be long and difficult. Deborah's pregnancy claim has complicated things, and her lawyer is pushing for a significant settlement. My lawyer assures me we have a strong case, especially with the evidence of her infidelity, but it's still a stressful situation. Despite all this, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. This experience has shown me how strong I can be, and I'm determined to come out of this a better, wiser person. I'm focusing on rebuilding my life one day at a time, surrounding myself with honest, supportive people, and looking forward to a future free from deception. Update 3, it's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm finally starting to feel like I'm coming out on the other side of this ordeal. The divorce is finalized, and I can now share the full story of what happened. The paternity test results came back, and as I suspected, I'm not the father of Deborah's baby. It turns out the father is Alex, the co-worker she'd been having an affair with. When confronted with the test results, Deborah finally admitted to her lies and agreed to an uncontested divorce. The truth about her pregnancy also came out. Deborah wasn't actually pregnant when she made the announcement. She had lied about it in a desperate attempt to stop the divorce. When she realized she couldn't keep up the charade, she claimed she had a miscarriage. It was a new low, even for her. With the pregnancy lie exposed, most of the friends and family who had sided with Deborah came around and apologized to me. It's been a mix of vindication and sadness. I'm glad the truth is out, but it's painful to see how many people were deceived. The divorce settlement was largely in my favor. Deborah's lies and infidelity, once fully exposed, left her with little leverage. I got to keep most of our shared assets, including the house, which I've decided to sell. I don't want to live in a place with so many bad memories. On a brighter note, my graphic design career has really taken off. The clients I worked with during the worst of the divorce drama have become long-term contracts, and I've even hired 2 junior designers to help with the workload. It feels good to be throwing myself into work I enjoy and seeing success. My friendship with Emily has deepened over these months. We've started dating, taking things slow and being very open with each other about our feelings and expectations. It's refreshing to be in a relationship built on honesty from the start. I've also picked up some old hobbies I had abandoned during my marriage. I've joined a local hiking group and have been going on weekend trips, rediscovering my love for nature and photography. It's been great for my mental health and has helped me meet new, genuine people. As for Deborah, I've heard through mutual friends that she's moved to another city to start fresh. Part of me hopes she's genuinely trying to change and be a better person, but I'm also glad to have that chapter of my life firmly closed. Looking back, I can see how I missed or ignored red flags in our relationship. But I'm not beating myself up over it. Instead, I'm using it as a learning experience. I'm more aware now of the importance of trust and honesty in relationships, and I'm better at spotting inconsistencies in what people say and do. To anyone going through a similar situation, I want to say that it does get better. It's a long, painful process, but staying true to yourself and surrounding yourself with supportive people really does help. I'm not glad this happened, but I'm proud of how I've handled it and excited about the future for the first time in a long while. My brother-in-law tried to steal my business while living rent-free in my house. I kicked him out and my wife sided with him. 3 months later, he gets arrested for scamming others. I am John, 32 years old, and married for the last 4 years to Zoe, age 30. We met at college in the second year. We were ganged up by the lecturer to prepare a presentation for an entrepreneurship class project. During that project, I was moved by her fast thinking and going for the jugular innovative ideas. We spent countless nights in the library, fueled by cheap coffee and big dreams, working on business plans that we were sure would change the world. It had been extremely tough at first, post-graduation, when I had decided to open my own marketing agency. It was tough going at first. I worked from my parents' garage that first year, living on nothing but ramen noodles and determination. Zoe was my rock during this time. Even though she had taken a job at a big finance firm in the city, she'd spent her weekends helping me think of ideas and pitch to potential clients. Sure enough, things started to pick up, albeit rather slowly. First, a couple of small, local businesses turned into my clients. In another month, a mid-sized tech startup followed. Before I knew it, I had to start hiring employees, and then more employees. And here, 5 years down the line, I am so proud to say that Apex Marketing today has 15 family members, servicing the state. I married Zoe, and we finally married 2 years into my business journey. It was a small ceremony, we didn't have much money, but it was perfect for us. We promised we would always support each other's dreams, no matter what. And for the most part, we have kept that promise. The problem started 6 months ago when Zoe's older brother, Max, 35M, moved back into our city. In truth, I had only met Max a few times before, at our wedding and a couple of family Christmases, but Zoe had always spoken very highly of him. He was her childhood hero, the cool older brother who taught her how to ride a bike and stood up to bullies for her. Max had been a tech startup entrepreneur on the West Coast for a good decade. He was the type who was just going to make it big but for some reason didn't. Now he was unemployed again because his last venture had failed, and his debt was through the roof. Max called Zoe and told her that he was coming home to regroup and plan his next move. I was thrilled. I figured that it would be really good for Zoe to get a fresh start with her brother and was planning ways that we would be able to hang out with him. I even offered him the chance to stay with us for a few weeks until he finds an apartment. Time began to drag into weeks, and these weeks began to be some months. First, it was okay. Max was charming and full of stories about Silicon Valley. He would regale us with tales of the celebrity investors, the lavish launch parties. However, as time went on, I started to find some inconsistencies in his stories. Timelines were a bit off, and the names he was dropping seemed to change with each retelling. Max always found excuses about what was wrong. The apartment or job couldn't be found, rents were high or the market was tough. He was waiting to hear the results about some big opportunity. All the while, he sat in our house, playing video games on our big screen TV and ordering from the most expensive of takeout places on our dime, spending all his other time elsewhere, doing the same thing. I tried to be patient. I would remember how tough it had been when I was starting out, and I wanted to cut Max some slack, but it was getting pretty thin. Our grocery bills had at least doubled, our electricity bill was through the roof, and Max hadn't contributed a dime to anything. Zoe kept covering for him, saying he was under too much strain for a while now and he needed our help. I got it, but at some point, I felt like we were supporting a sense of entitlement. When I'd try to talk to Zoe about it, she'd get defensive. He's family, she'd say. We can't just throw him out on the street. The worst thing that could happen is that Max started taking an interest in my business. I was actually flattered for a minute there. He'd ask what I do, how I do it, what my strategies are, and how I deal with customers. So maybe he was going to try to get back out in the working world and was using me as inspiration, right? But then he started giving me unsolicited advice. He knew enough to criticize the marketing campaigns with which he said we were not cutting edge enough. He could prescribe for me all the things we could do with our website, which would have cost a bomb. He even tried to tell me how to manage my team, though we hadn't met them. I ignored him, but it was becoming irritating. After all, it is not like Max ever established a successful business himself. And he tried to instruct me on the subject. Gradually I started avoiding coming home early, preferring to stay in the office to avoid another episode of Max enlightening me about business. I finally had the migraine last week and decided to come home early. My head was pounding as I stepped into the house and heard Max's voice coming from the home office. He was using the phone to someone, on my computer. At first, I thought nothing of it, maybe he was finally job hunting. But then I heard him mention Mrs. Johnson's name. Mrs. Johnson is one of the biggest clients I have. She owns a chain of boutique hotels and was among the early business trend followers of Apex. To me, her account represents a serious chunk of our yearly revenues. My jaw hit the floor when Max told Mrs. Johnson he was now co-running the agency with me and had some exciting new ideas for her account. In other words, he was trying to hijack my client relationships. I burst into the office and Max went white. He hurriedly ended the call and tried to play it down as one big mistake. He admitted that he was just trying to help, that he thought he could throw some Silicon Valley innovation or relevance in there to light a fire under the idea. But I knew better. This wasn't a bumbling, well-meaning mistake. This was an attempt to ingratiate his way into my business. Who knows how long this had been going on? How many other clients had he contacted? I was furious. This was all the frustration that had been building up in me all these months. I told Max he needed to leave. Not just the office, but our house. I gave him 24 hours to pack his things and get out. He tried to argue that I was overreacting, that he was merely trying to help the family business grow. Family business? He had been living in my house for months without paying rent, providing nothing but criticism and empty promises. And now he had the nerve to claim my hard-earned success as a family business? Zoe had just walked in the middle of our argument. Shocked to the core at seeing us yelling at each other, I thought she would side with me when I told her what had happened. For this was our livelihood Max was messing with. But to my surprise, Zoe was livid with me. She accused me of being a child in my overreaction, of being unkind to her brother. She couldn't understand why I couldn't, or wouldn't, just work with him or even give him a chance. It was like she had forgotten all the late nights, all the sacrifices we'd made to get this business to where it is today. I tried to point out that Max had betrayed my trust and put my client relationships in danger, but Zoe wouldn't have it. She kept saying that must be some mistake, and Max would never mean to steal my business. It has been 3 days since that fateful meeting. Max is still here, imposed on my pleasure. He acts like an injured party, convinced that I am threatened by his supremely better business knowledge. Zoe is barely speaking to me, she is with him all the time, plotting ways of convincing me to let him stay. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Am I really the asshole for trying to protect my business and wanting to kick someone out who was trying to take advantage of my hospitality? How do I make Zoe understand her brother isn't who she thinks he is? Update 1. I am aware that it has been 2 weeks since I wrote my last entry, and in the interim, there has really been so much happening. Of all, I have to sincerely thank all of you for your advice and support. It really helped me put this into perspective and gave me the guts to act. Things were immediate and incredibly tense after my confrontation with Max. Zoe was still pissed off at me. She only ever said 2 words to me, commenting on my rough treatment of her baby brother. Max, on the other hand, became the professional victim. He would mope around the house, heaving big sighs and saying that he had really only tried to be help to the family. So, I decided to take a step back, gather more information before making a drastic move. I secretly spent a couple of days checking my business records, emails, and recent client interactions. What I found out made my blood run cold. So I called Mrs. Johnson, supposedly to check in after our last meeting. You already know, I told her in a semi-reverent sort of way, that I hoped that call was helpful that you had received from my associate. Mrs. Johnson sounded confused. Oh, you mean your brother-in-law? She said. He seemed nice, but I was a bit surprised when he started talking about completely overhauling our marketing strategy. My heart sank. I inquired of Mrs. Johnson how long ago this conversation had taken place. Oh, about 3 weeks ago, she replied. He's called a couple of times since then, actually. 3 weeks. 3 weeks Max had been contacting my clients behind my back. I thanked Mrs. Johnson and hastily bade goodbye. Then I began calling other clients. What I discovered was something so terrifying, a month-long history of Max talking to some of the largest clients I have. He introduced himself as our partner in his mouthful of acronyms for the very specific services that we did not even offer. One local restaurateur shared that Max promised him to create a revolutionary AI-driven menu optimization system. Another said Max was pitching a blockchain-based loyalty program. Of course, we couldn't and never intended to deliver any of those things. My head reeled. This was too much of a coincidence. And this was certainly no case of mistaken identity. This was sabotage, premeditated malignant intention. What for? To hurt my business from within. Armed with that, I knew I had to talk to Zoe. I found her inside folding clothes in our room. We need to talk, I started. It's about Max. Zoe sighed, she probably prepared for another argument. Definitely, when I handed her the proof in black and white, clients' emails and messages giving an account of up-close conversations with me, realization started to build up through her eyes. I don't understand, she murmured, sliding into bed. Why would he do this? I all but came to tears when she finally believed me, yet, at the same moment, great sadness for the pain this was obviously causing her washed over me with relief. Finally. I don't know, but we can't let this continue. Zoe nodded slowly. Enough, she whispered. He has to leave. But when we confronted Max together, things got worse. At first, he tried to deny everything, saying that the clients misunderstood. But he quickly changed his demeanor as we presented him with evidence one after the other. He accused me of turning Zoe against him. You always thought you were better than all of us, didn't you? He accused. You're just scared because you know I could run this company better than you could ever do. But he didn't stop there. Max even accused me of stealing his intellectual property in a court of law by stating that the ideas he had shared when living with us were legally his, and that he had recordings of these conversations where it was clear that I had appropriated his ideas. It was all nonsense. Max had never shared even a remotely practical idea, now this one was threatening him with a lawsuit. Baseless, but the threat of legal action was terrifying. We told him he had 48 hours to move out, or the authorities would be notified. Those 2 days were incredibly tense. Max would try to guilt trip Zoe, reminding her of their childhood and how she was betraying him, and make veiled threats about ruining my reputation in the industry. But we held our ground. To Zoe's credit, she didn't flinch. She was both hurt and angry, but she stood strong beside me. In the morning, the day he was to leave, we found Max gone. He had left in the course of the night, carrying away some of our electronics and most of the things made out of Zoe's jewelry. We found a note on the kitchen table that simply read, "You'll regret this." We filed a police report, but in all honesty, the chances of our stuff being recovered are slim. What's important is that he's out of our house and our lives. Zoe is extremely upset. She now feels betrayed by her own brother and also starts to feel guilty about not having seen through him a long time ago. She was constantly repeating that she should have listened to me all along, and that she should have noticed the signs. I try my best to comfort her, telling her that now what Max is doing is not her fault. All while I'm in the process of turning my clients from liability to asset. I've been making personal phone calls, sending personal emails, and even sending personal visits to apologize for the confusion and ensure them that Max had absolutely no authority to make any promises about the workings of the deal. But most of my clients have been understanding to me, and I really am just scared about what the long-term effects are going to be on the business's reputation. I've been looking into the legal options to fend off any future interference of the business by Max. Well, it's been a bit of a haywire couple of weeks, but I think I've gotten on the same page with Zoe, finally. We are truly united in this crisis, and in a weird way, it has brought us closer. Our communication has opened up and we talk more than we have in months. I'll keep you updated if something major happens. Thank you all for your support during this crazy time. Update 2. A month has passed since Max left, and things are slowly beginning to fall back into normalcy, the old way. I thought I would just update everyone with what's going on in my world. The good news, I did manage to retain them all after, again, literally a ton of phone calls, emails, personal meetings. Understandably, she was upset at the confusion and had already threatened to place her business elsewhere, but I was most definitely on the rocks of losing Mrs. Johnson. After a very long lunch explaining the situation to her and laying out a new, realistic marketing plan for her hotels, she agreed to stay on board. In fact, this whole ordeal seems to have further strengthened my relations with a certain set of clients, who really respected and valued the honesty and effort that went into writing everything. A few even told me their family business dramas, which helped put things into perspective. Legally, we even spoke to a lawyer about Max's threats. There is no question that Max has no grounds on which to argue an intellectual property claim. His ideas that he may have mentioned in passing while living with us are not the intellectual property, especially when there's no proof that I actually had used any of these so-called ideas in my business. But with Max's erratic behavior and death threats, we did apply for a protective order. This enforces it, in my client's regard so that he is not allowed near our home or office. It's hoped we will never need to rely on them, but it's reassuring to know that the law is with us in this regard. The police did not have any breakthrough in catching our stolen things. They said unless something comes back through a pawn shop or online sale, they can't do much about it. We have moved on from it all. We have beefed up home security and changed all our passwords and account information just to be safe. The hardest thing this past month has been trying to help Zoe process it all. She's been living with so much guilt and betrayal. Max wasn't just her brother, he was her childhood hero. She's been telling me stories of how Max used to let her tag along with his friends, how he raised her to stand up for herself with blows, how he dared her to continue gymnastics when our parents wanted her to have a safe career. This other side of Max has shocked Zoe to the core. She's been sleeping fitfully and is jumpy whenever the phone rings, fearing it might be Max. She's also been going through old family photos, as if trying to find clues she'd missed into the kind of person Max would become. I told her to go see a counselor to work through her feelings about all of this, but she's pretty resistant to that idea. She says it's just a matter of time, though I do worry. I've tried to be here for her, but, I'll be straight, it's been trying. I can't help but get a bit angry, even. After all, I wised up to Max so much sooner. Then I remember that Zoe had a long history of time spending with Max, so it's not just that she's in any relationship. And then, something out of the blue happened last week. We got a call from Max and Zoe's parents. Max had gone to their place and narrated a whole different story. In his version of what happened, he had come up with all the ideas and I had stolen them. And when he threatened to go to the police, that's when I asked him to leave. He had shown himself to be an innocent victim and Zoe, who had picked me above her purebred brother. Zoe had been on the phone for hours to her parents, explaining what had really occurred. They were as shocked as Zoe. They, too, had regarded Max as a golden child, the one who would go far. The news of his subterfuge and theft hurt them. Luckily, at the end, they did believe us. It helped a lot that we showed them the evidence of Max's actions. They apologized for their son's actions and reassured us that if ever Max contacted them again, they would inform us. I saw that this was a really tough and tiresome conversation for Zoe, although I bet, in some ways, it brought a relief to her. It helped her to realize she was not the only one who had been duped by Max. As for my business, I've taken steps to prevent something like this from happening again. I have put very stringent privacy guidelines in place, and all my workers appreciate the need to button their lips about our clients. There is also an increased sense of caution about what and where I share things at home with respect to work. Pity it has to come to that before I can be careful in my own home, but it did. It has indeed been an awful month, but I am beginning to feel that very gradually things take a turn for the better. Certainly, Zoe and I are talking to each other as we never did previously, and though the experience was so painful, after all, it brought us so much closer together. So, we've had a lot of deep talks connected with belief, loyalty toward one another, family, and what lies ahead of us. I've also felt some positive changes towards my business. This crisis forced me to look hard at the operations I was conducting and at client relationships. I've also started to use new strategies that make it easier to communicate with the client and to conduct the flows of the processes. It sort of pushed me to do things that otherwise I would not have done. To be posted again shortly once something major happens with Max or legally. For now, we are moving on and healing in our personal lives and my business. Update 3, it's been 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some final developments in this saga. The biggest news is, Max was arrested 2 weeks ago. Not for anything relating to us, thankfully, but for trying the same scam on another small business owner in the neighboring city. Apparently, he had not learned his lesson and thought he could get away with it again. We learned this when we received a call from a detective. He had been investigating some recent activities of Max and had come up with our police report after he stole all our stuff. He wanted to learn if we would be willing to give a statement regarding our interactions with Max. It was through relating with Zoe that we agreed to cooperate with the inquiry. We spent one afternoon at the police station relating everything to the police. I found it exhausting, remembering everything, but at the same time relieving. The detective informed us that we weren't the only ones Max had tried to jack. There were at least 3 other cases they knew of, all following a similar pattern. Max would ingratiate himself with small business owners, push his way into their operations, and then either steal from them or take over their client relationships. Zoe took the news of Max's arrest hard. After the detective got off the phone with her, I found her crying it out in the bedroom. I keep thinking about when we were kids, she told me. How did he go from being my protective big brother to this? Little by little, though, I think that through the news in the days following, it sort of made Zoe at peace with everything. It really helped her to realize that it was not her fault that Max was being blamed. She has stopped jumping at every ring and sleeps much better now. Good news is, Zoe finally relented and saw a counsel. She has had a couple of meeting sessions by now and says it helps her get to terms with what really happened. She has also been active in rehabilitating some of her old friends that she lost touch with during Max's stay with us. I am very proud of her, for it seems like those are really steps towards healing. Now it's more or less back to business, and all the extra effort I put in to talk to these clients during the crisis weeks has now proved useful. Heck, I even have a couple of new clients out of the ones these clients of Max referred. It seems the way I handled the situation was impressive to such an extent that they went around speaking about my professionalism. Through this, Zoe and I have been able to have deep discussions about the future, realizing that being on the same page about life, particularly family, is paramount. We have gone through lots of conversation regarding our future, testing clearly defined ways on how to handle family requests in the future. We have also begun discussing with each other the issue of how we would like to structure our family. This ordeal has dawned on us that we are strong enough as a team and that we feel up to the challenge of being parents. It is, therefore, amazing to plan what awaits us in the future, as it is not just a matter of reacting to the crises. Last week, finally, we managed to replace the TV that Max had taken when he left. While setting it up, Zoe turned to me and said, "You know, I'm actually glad he took the old one. This new one's much better, and every time I look at it, I'm reminded that we got through this together." Small, but it meant a lot. Looking back, as much as this experience was a struggle, I believe it strengthened our relationship. We learned a lot about communication, trust, and how to stand united in the face of adversity. This has taught us that even within family, setting boundaries is vital. And since then, we have not heard a word from Max, but to be honest, we are just fine with that. We are busy with each other and the life we expect to build together. And should he ever try to come back into our lives, we will know how to stand our ground together. Thanks to all for your support through this journey. Your advice and encouragement helped us to carry on. It truly was a very tough time. Here's to moving forward and leaving the drama behind.